Tobias on locks and insecurity engineering. This is Marc Tobias's new book. I love Insecurity Engineering. It's absolutely fantastic. It's over 700 pages. You get access to some of the online videos. It's a fantastic book. And I'm interviewing Marc Tobias coming right up. We were both in Las Vegas at the same time, and I was able to do a really good interview with Marc. More videos coming up with Marc. And go out and buy his book. I'll put the links in the description. Here I am with Marc Tobias. We've been trying to do this interview for months now. We decided a long time ago we're both going to be here at the same time. I'll let Marc just go right into this because what's the name of the book, the latest?
Tobias on Locks and Insecurity Engineering. It's on Wiley.com. It's on Aloha.com. I think there's several vendors, but the primary is Wiley.
And I love the name, Insecurity Engineering.
Well, Terry, I coined that because we work for all the major lock manufacturers, both in the U.S. and Europe and the Middle East. And the problem is some of them are doing is insecurity engineering. They are not thinking their way through bypass problems. And basically the book is a very detailed guide on the history, on the law, on patents, on intellectual property, everything that goes into lock manufacturing. Locks, as you know, are a very complicated business. My mother used to say, "What's so complicated about sticking a key in a lock?" And that's the public's perception. There isn't. To make it work properly and securely is very complicated. I decided during the pandemic, because nobody was traveling, I wasn't being interrupted.
COVID.
That was my COVID sabbatical. Mm-hmm. So, and I was lucky I didn't get it. I lived in Pennsylvania where we didn't have a problem, where I lived. And so I sat for 3 years and wrote the book. And this is my 8th book. And I decided to write about my experience, especially as a lawyer, because all of security is about liability. And if you make a mistake in designs, if it's a defective design, and somebody gets hurt, robbed, killed, or information gets compromised, somebody's going to write a check. And that's what got all the lock manufacturers' attention. And all the work we do is covered by lawyer-client privilege. So when we find a defect in the design, we can't be forced to testify. So everybody recognized the value of that, because before that, they all hated our guts, and as you know. That's all turned around actually 15 years ago when we came out with our book about Medeco, which is still the best high-security lock in America. I don't know about Canada.
You love the M4, too. I was surprised.
I do like the M4. They solved a lot of the problems from the M3. Not all of them, but
enough to make you happy.
Enough
to recommend the product.
To make, we've always liked Medeco, even though we wrote the book on how to destroy their locks.
Yes, I loved with the M3, you did it with a paper clip.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And this is
they didn't really think out the slide, did they?
Well, they've taken it out now.
Yes.
The problem, this is a perfect example of insecurity engineering, which is what the book is about. Medeco designed a secondary security layer, which was a slider that had to drop into place before the sidebar could drop in, if your readers understand Medeco, the way they work. So it was very clever, but it wasn't for security, it was for key control, to create virtual keyways. So the original M3 had 26 different slider steps. So locksmiths, first of all, it prevented a lot of counterfeit blanks because nobody could make enough blanks with different steps. The problem was that the offset was, as I recall, 40 thousandths of an inch, which is the standard diameter of a paperclip. So they never thought, we can just put a paperclip in and move the slider to the right position and we're done. And actually, my friend Eric Michaud out in California, who does a lot of cyber work, he also figured it out. And actually gave him credit in the book. So the book, Insecurity Engineering, is exactly what the title means. They are not first of all, the mechanical engineers that we train at the University of Pittsburgh, we have a special security engineering lab. These are senior students. They didn't know about patents. They didn't know, they're not taught practicality, they're taught theory. And they don't know how to apply it. And this is a real problem for engineers when they go to work for lock manufacturers. And they also have no imagination. Now, I'm being generalized, but they don't have any imagination. And so I've gone into great depth in the book. It's a 700-page book about all of this. And there's also 180 rules that I've developed over the years, starting with all security is about liability. And the second one, which you would understand, even coming from Canada, the key never unlocks the lock. And everybody says, well, what are you talking about? The key always unlocks the lock. No, it really doesn't. The key actuates the mechanism that allows the lock to be opened. And once you start thinking as a design engineer in those terms, now you start thinking about, okay, if we don't have the key, how do we open the lock? Which is impressioning, lockpicking, decoding, all the techniques that we use. And so that's where it starts. And then I went into detailed history several hundred years ago, because the way that they were opening lever locks and then pin tumbler locks, warded locks, all the basic mechanisms, it's the same thing today.
The history you go back in your book from before the pyramids to the English, the book is worth the history of lockpicking, bypass methods.
I went back
I
went back 4,000 years.
That is phenomenal right there. It's probably the best read I've ever done in my life.
And it's not that long, but I spent a lot of time in London at the Industrial Museum because they have a really good permanent lock collection. So years ago, I went and got a lot of their photographs of all the different kinds of locks. You take lever locks, which you guys are probably still using some in Canada.
Yeah, only in safety deposit boxes.
Well, yeah, but you guys aren't you still like 50 to 100 years?
No. We're not that bad.
Well, that's Australia.
I haven't been to Australia, so I don't know. But I know in most of Asia is about 50 years behind North America, if not more, except for maybe their casinos and high security.
That's because they're American locks.
Yes.
In fact, Medeco does a lot of the casinos. When I was in Macau, it's a lot of Medeco.
It's the same with Manila.
Same thing, Dubai.
Yeah.
Medeco has Dubai especially. Medeco is heavy in Asia with all their multi-locks.
Well, the Khalif Tower, it was renamed because they were going bankrupt. So the sheikh came in and says, yeah, put my name on it. I'll give you the 40 billion that you need or whatever. Well, that's all Medeco locks. Yeah. That's why we really, notwithstanding we wrote the book, everybody thinks we're against Medeco. We love Medeco. We think it's a solid design, and it was absolutely groundbreaking when the two engineers came up with it in Salem, Virginia in 1968 in their garage. Nobody thought about not only lifting pin tumblers, but rotating them. So what we did, which you should do a separate video on Medeco, because there's so many of them out there.
Well, they sort of threw the gauntlet down when they said,
you can't do it.
This lock is pick proof.
Yeah, that was, actually what they said was bump proof.
Oh, bump proof. Oh, so they went bump proof?
They went bump proof. When at DEF CON, we showed how to bump open conventional pin tumbler locks, which is about 95% of probably America.
Back then that was considered, my granddad used to bump locks.
Yeah.
My granddad in the 40s and 50s,
of course,
and 60s was bumping locks. And then all of a sudden, late 80s, it became a thing?
In Denmark, actually World War II intelligence agencies used bumping. The original patent is 1925, as is detailed in the book. And then my friends Hans Maushede, who's the locksmith in Denmark, showed me bumping and wrapping of cylinders, which I was doing as a kid.
Yes.
You put your thumb on the back of the plug.
We wrapped them all the time because we were master keying slag.
That's how you got them open.
If rather than pick it or shim it, we just
wrapped or shim it, you just wrap them open.
Wrap them.
And so we were at DEF CON, and this little 11-year-old girl in Lockpicking Village, Jenna Lynn, she's bumping open slag locks, quickset locks, all the conventional pin tumbler locks. So we did a video and we showed it, a couple thousand attendees. And so Medeco announced to the news media that their locks were bump proof, and they legitimately thought they were. And one of the testing labs in Europe had looked at it and said, you cannot bump open these locks. So much for the testing labs. And so I got together with my partner, Tobias Blues Manis. I got to tell you, it was very difficult to select his first name and my last name together.
Yes.
And you talk about the very few people know about him.
Well, he's a brilliant locksmith.
He is unbelievable.
Venezuela.
He is. I used to be really good at picking, but I don't do a lot of it anymore. He is brilliant.
Yeah, he's probably the best lock picker.
Well, I don't know about that, but he's a machinist also.
Yes.
So we would make all of our own tools that we needed. So Toby and I hooked up, and he was working for the largest Medeco dealer in Miami, who allowed us to use the shop to break Medeco locks. And so we embarked on an 18-month project because we didn't know whether we could do it. And Medeco really was impenetrable. And they had a 40-year reputation. You're not going to do anything with these locks. John Fall developed some shimming tools that were complicated to use out of England. Brilliant.
Is he England or is he Jersey or Guernsey?
Jersey. Because
Jersey, yes.
England.
Yes.
I used to go visit him in Jersey.
Yeah.
And so methodically, we worked our way through the problem. It's a great read. It's Open in 30 Seconds, which is the title of that book. So Medeco announced that their locks were bump-proof to the media. And we called our friend at Medeco and said, you might not want to be saying this to the media. And he says, well, and they filed for a trademark, bump-proof, which I found.
Interesting.
Oh, that was the mistake. And so they actually withdrew that, and they had to admit that they had actually, and then it was virtually bump-proof and virtually resistant, all these crazy terms that meant nothing. And so we demonstrated, we got patents for 4 keys that would allow us to bump and pick all of their non-master key locks in the world. I mean, really. And once they realized that we actually knew what we were talking about, everything in the world changed around. And then all the locksmiths in America that hated our guts, that was to be kind. Because they all said, oh,
Oh, geez. If I said I knew Marc Tobias, it was like
death.
the Antichrist of locksmiths.
Well, that's okay.
Yes, which is like
That's okay.
And now in 2024,
Now we're okay.
You're actually signing books at Aloha
in their booth.
in their booth, invited
in their bookstore.
Invited here.
Yeah, no, because everybody realized the lock industry, engineering-wise, was not in a good place when we started going after them. Now they've all got their act together. Every company that we work for, they are taking security really seriously. Why? Because, again, they started getting sued for defective product. Look at all the lawsuits. Look at Cabo right now, Dorma Cabo, with millions of hotel rooms that are at risk that they're dealing with. And now everything's moving to software and software hardware.
Which is another whole story into
It's
itself.
going to be great. We should do a video. And so, but that's the story. So I coined the phrase insecurity engineering. I lectured at Cambridge, still do, for 20 years with Ross Anderson, who sadly passed away in April. Brilliant. He wrote the book, which I would highly recommend to all your readers, called Security Engineering. It's being sold with my book as a pair. And Ross was a brilliant guy for 25 years at Cambridge. So that's how this started. I came up with the idea from his book because insecurity engineering in mechanical lock world is the flip side of the cyber world, because mechanical locks are totally different. And now we have an integration of electronics with mechanical locks. And therein lies the problem, because we're not software guys. We go after the interface between electronics and hardware, between software and hardware. And that's how we're able to open a lot of them. And so that's the book. I would, notwithstanding I wrote it, I would highly recommend your readers, if they want a guide to vulnerability assessment and how to analyze a lock, especially risk managers in business and lawyers, and engineers, if they want a guide on how to assess a lock for if it's got vulnerabilities, because we've done that a lot for clients, for businesses, because they don't know. And they go by the manufacturer's representations, which often are wrong, because the salespeople, they don't know either. And so, I mean, you look at the Kaba nightmare in 2010 with the push button lock that can be opened in 2 seconds by a magnet. Because in 1965, when that lock was developed, there was no rare earth magnets. They weren't strong enough. So one of the critical components in that lock, and there are millions of them in government facilities.
I sold thousands.
Airports, banks,
locks.
clinics. They're everywhere. And unless they've been upgraded, they're at risk with a magnet you can buy on the internet. In 2 seconds, they're opened. Mm-hmm. And because the critical component that allows that lock to be opened is magnetic until it's upgraded. Now, Cabo upgraded for free.
Well, that was the great thing. They're one of the few companies that I can kind of know of when they found out when, you know, where they were forced into it or whatever. Yeah, they actually responded with a upgrade kit, and it was free.
They did, but for 6 months they covered it up.
Yes,
they didn't
know what to do.
They didn't tell anybody about it. Harry Shearer, who I've done the Defense Against Methods of Entry series with for 20 years that you know very well, Harry was teaching government agencies how to open those locks, but they didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's so funny. There was we can't really talk about it too much, but there was a government safe that was easily opened, and they stayed quiet about it until they realized. They stayed quiet, and they didn't tell the manufacturer, didn't tell anybody. We all knew we could open them. And all of a sudden, somebody decided in the government going, we have 6,000 of these products. And they went to the manufacturer and said, fix it, which they did. But then they came back at us going, can you break it?
Yeah, of course.
Can you open it again? And we said, look.
Well, this is the game.
Yeah, it's the endless cycle.
As I point out in the book.
There's competing interests. The U.S. government wants to be able to open foreign embassies and whatever, but they want their lock secure, but they don't want anybody to know about it.
Yeah.
And they don't want the manufacturer to fix the problem, but the manufacturer, once they're notified, they do want to fix the problem, unless the U.S. government says, maybe not.
Yeah, we have a nice back door here.
Yeah, we have a nice back door, and
it's working great. And nobody knows about it, but then everybody knows about it.
Until Marc Tobias said something.
Well, even then you stay quiet on a whole bunch of stuff too.
I have. You know, remember the XO7?
Yes.
Well,
you got in trouble on that, didn't you?
No, I didn't get in trouble. Okay. I talked to GAO, or the accounting agency, because
for people who don't know, that's a high security safe combination. The standard.
This from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They were tested by 12 or so government agencies. Nobody could open it. Intel did a special processor. It's a brilliant lock. Okay, it's used on FBI offices all over the country. It's used on banks, ATMs, everywhere. And so I got a call from a locksmith in upper state New York that said, I can open this. And one of our safe techs in America, McCamey, he had figured out how to open it, but he really didn't. One of the guys at the national labs figured out how to inject grease to open it. Okay. So I looked at it. I had just been down to the factory and got my sample. And I assumed, it's secure. There's no problem. Never make that assumption. Just read the book.
Yeah.
So I injected silicone, because the way that lock works, there's a little solenoid. When you dial the right combination, it's a solenoid there's two gears that mesh together that allow you to retract the bolt. So I injected silicone that's set up in a couple minutes, and I created a third interface gear. So the silicone actually created a gear, open, closed, open, closed. So I got a hold of the general accounting office, which is in charge of locks. And I said, I want to publish this. No. And they said, well, how are you doing it? I said, I'm drilling a tiny hole to inject the silicone. Well, that's a forced entry. We don't care about that. I said, so I can publish it. He says, no. We'll go after you if you publish it. So I didn't. I respected what they wanted. I put it in the book because it was long enough, because the series now is like X10 or whatever it is. But this is, again, a prime example of a failure of imagination on the part of design engineers. What if? And this, as you know, this is a big problem in defeating locks. And I also go into our 3T2R rule, which we invented years ago, which is to assess the security of a mechanism, time, tools, and training, and repeatability and reliability of an exploit. And everybody needs to understand that for assessing, is this lock really secure? Forget the standards. I've been on the UL Standards Technical Panel for 15 years. Forget that. First of all, they're all out of date. And we defeat locks, just like you do, outside the standard.
Well, that's the thing, is the bump proof standard is so friggin' fake.
First there was no standard, then it was so many minutes. Bumping is chaotic. Yeah. You may bump a lock open the first time, or you may try for 5 minutes and not open it and come back in 10 minutes and do it the first time. You know, we did the Wired magazine trick when they did an article about us and Medeco in 2009. With Charlie Graber, my friend, wrote it, and they got a hold of a Medeco locksmith in New York and got 6 certified locks, Medeco locks, brand new in the box. They delivered them under seal. They gave them to us at Wired magazine headquarters, which was Condé Nast in New York, and they told Toby and I, you guys have 10 minutes each to open these locks, which is the standard. We'll write the article. If not, Medeco's going to sue you guys for millions for libel and slander. So I got to tell you, the night before we all had dinner, and I told Toby, I brought a nail gun with me. If we don't open those locks tomorrow, I'm putting that next to your head and pulling the trigger. and Toby says, don't worry about it. We'll open the locks. So he picked all of them open in under 10 minutes, some 2 minutes. And then they turned to me and they said, okay, now take your special keys and bump open the lock. And you have to understand, our special keys were 25 thousandths inch thick. So there's not a lot of material to rotate the pins. So 7 seconds. That video will live forever on the internet. It's on our YouTube channel. And there's nothing that Medeco could say about it. And everybody then got the message. And so the industry really tightened up what they were doing in R&D, especially Assa Abloy. They built a lab in Berlin. They've got a cyber lab now, I think, in Poland. Everybody spent a lot of money on security. So basically, that's what the book's about. So Terry, when you get time, you should read it.
It's 700 pages.
Right.
You can press butterflies.
How many images? How many images in there?
200 and some images.
I know. I've just been looking at the images.
Well, there's an ebook. I think you got the ebook.
I do. Yes.
And the images are in color in the ebook, so they're much better than black and white in the printed version.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's a good read. And I think it's important for the industry. I think, and that, as everybody says, that'll be your legacy. I hope not for a while.
Got a few more books in you, that's for sure.
That's so much work.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to work on the second edition, which will be attacks on electronic cylinders.
Residential grade electronic locks are so vulnerable to every form of attack going.
Yeah, let's talk about the flipper.
Oh yeah, we're having fun. We're getting ahead of ourselves quite a bit. This is about your talk about your book, but we'll throw the flipper part in. You have a flipper, I have a flipper.
I was opening hotel rooms all over Europe last month. I'd taken cloned the keys, and I was at the Crown Plaza in Israel, which is where I always stay. And they said, no, these are vetted, they're secure, they're impossible, no way. Finally, the head of security says, okay, I'm already sick of you. Why don't you show me? So I took it to my room, click, the door's open. He looks at me, he says, no way.
OMG. No. I am fascinated by the flipper, and we were talking about the Raspberry earlier.
Well, that's old. The Raspberry Pi is old.
Yes, but no, it's still, the flipper just...
Well, it's a compact piece of test equipment.
It's so easy.
That's all it is. That's what it is.
And you were the hotels is fun to play with. I've been playing with it on garage doors. Besides Teslas, right out of the box with a simple modification. We were opening Tesla, the little
Gas can,
the way that we can't, well, the little we can't call it the gas. It's the electronic shutter that opens up the so you can plug into. Right. So we did that out of the box. We were playing with it, and we started experimenting with it on Teslas. We're actually using a friend's Tesla. We're experimenting on that to open them. And then the fun thing we're having is with garage doors, and it really goes back to the old style brute force attack, or library attacks, or brute force attacks.
Well, I don't have a Tesla. How do you get into a Tesla? Is it a key fob?
It's a key fob.
So can you clone the key fob?
Yes.
We're still experimenting. We're way ahead of ourselves here.
I would imagine you can't. It should be a rolling code.
It should be a rolling code. But on some of the other things that use rolling codes, we're actually just bulk attacked it with all the codes in it.
If you watch a couple articles I did in Germany on Forbes years ago with Sasha and Addie Wendt, they sell the box to government agencies to do the man-in-the-middle attack with key fobs. As a matter of fact, it resulted in Mercedes issuing a internal memo to turn off the keyless entry.
Yes.
Because of the problems.
And we're talking about Chrysler had a huge problem, which they've sort of fixed, where you could open up the doors and start the car. And Chrysler knows about it, and they've modified it. That's automotive security is another whole different area.
You remember they had this pneumatic system, I think on Mercedes and maybe some other brands, that the release buttons they were air controlled. If you kick the rear bumper, you would trigger.
That was a safety feature that you were getting around.
Yeah.
And also there's a front panel on a Beamer that you could hit, and that would unlock the car.
You gotta love it.
Yeah. The thing is, if you have time, imagination, and budget.
Imagination is the issue.
What can't you defeat?
As I pointed out in the book, it's all a lack of imagination is what this comes down to.
And I always say, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that a lot of companies are having. Well, I'm seeing with the offshore locks. They send me stuff saying, "Oh, this is pick proof. You can't get in it."
Forget it.
And I said, my favorite thing, have you tried the tin can attack on it?
And what's the tin can attack?
That's take any can of beer, pop, Coca-Cola,
and make a shim.
Oh, of course.
The shims.
I published that 20 years ago.
Well, it was probably done way. You were doing it way before that as a kid.
Yeah, no, of course. Especially the combination locks for computers.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
Probing the gate.
That was so easy. Well, in Samsonite briefcases.
Of course.
Yeah, all the luggage, everything. Insecurity engineering. You got to read the book. You got to purchase it. You got to look at it. You're at Aloha this weekend.
I'm in Aloha this weekend, and if anybody wants to write me, my email address is in the book. I really like feedback, and if you find anything wrong, if you want updates, whatever, get a hold of me.
I'm going to put the links in the description.
That's great.
And this is the first of many. We're going to try to get together and do a few more.
No, it's been, listen, the last time I was in Canada with you, we did the Sentry Safe. And with the magnetic bypass.
And that video is at
the stupid trick.
My dumb key force tool. Yeah. The video on Sentry Safes is over 6 million views now.
We did?
The one that you know, it's funny. You and I did that before I did the other video. It took a year to hit 100,000 views. It's probably one of my favorite videos I've ever done. And I'll put a link in this too. We had fun. It was it
was great.
It was a good video, and it took a year to hit 100,000.
It's amazing.
The stupid one I did on Sentry Safes at a business meeting. I was the food sponsor. I showed off opening the safe, and in 4 days it hit 1 million views.
Yeah. Well, this was just really stupid engineering.
Yes, and they sort of now again once
they thought they fixed it.
They did not fix it.
They did not.
Did not.
And so whatever. And then, of course, they sold the company. They left Rochester, New York, and moved it to Mexico.
Have you seen the new one where you can remove on the Sentry Safe? It's a video I haven't done yet, and I'll post it. This may be in this video or not. You just punch the keypad in, and then you just stick a piano wire and open up.
We did that. Listen, Toby and I are online because all of the keypads and the fingerprint readers were locked in by plastic. They just snapped in.
Or
They
silicone.
weren't screwed in. We just punched them in, used a coat hanger, and opened the lock. Yeah, to protect against kids and guns.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Why would we want anything?
And we can have more fun on that another story.
Terry, thanks for doing it.
Thank you very much, Mark. And Insecurity Engineering. That is such a
Tobias on
good
Locks,
name.
Yeah.
Tobias on Locks. See the link in the description. And thank you very much.
This was great. Hope you enjoy the Aloha conference.
Yeah, it was a fun interview with Mark. We could talk for hours and days, and we had a good interview. We're going to be doing some webinars coming up. We'll probably do some YouTube lives. Mark sort of made a hint at the end of, we actually went down, I went down to a convention in Las Vegas, and they wouldn't let me take pictures or do videos. So I'm not even going to mention their name. They're still stuck in the 70s. So that's why I was down in Vegas. Mark was down there too. He was promoting his book. Again, Tobias on Locks and Insecurity Engineering. Fantastic book. Pick it up, follow the link. Have a good day. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Subscribe to my channel. Also, visit my website and you can see what online locksmith training I have for beginners, intermediate, and advanced, as well as my covert methods of entry and my non-destructive methods of entry.